Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Alrighty. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from the Cane Fields outside of Erath. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone, for another week of the Tall and Short of It podcast. We've got all the usual today. We've got our quick hitters, some Formula One, some League of Legends, Magic the Gathering. But Justin, it's good to see you, man.
Yeah, good to see you too. It feels like just yesterday we were recording the race companion for Belgium.
Check it out.
Check it out on YouTube. It was a pretty good time. But yeah, happy to be back for another episode. Good to see you, my friend. How have you been? Tell me about your week.
Week's been pretty good. Work, I feel like I've kind of hit a point where I've caught up with a lot of stuff, so like that's not really stressing me out at all. We for my Rose, Thorn, and Seed this week, so we have nice rows of yesterday was Colleen and my second anniversary, so we don't do anything too crazy, but we went out to a dinner at a Mexican restaurant close by, had some delicious tacos and other food that I'll get into later, and it was just a nice relaxing night. Enjoyed spending that time and everything with her. It was a good rose. The thorn also, though, has to do with Colleen adjacently. Her car driver's side window got smashed in over the weekend. We found it after we'd gone grocery shopping. I drove us to grocery shop. We came back, and I hadn't been parked by her, and so I ended up parking right behind where she was. And as I pulled up, I was like, "Your window's shattered," and so we ended up having to call the police, file a police report, all the good stuff, and then spent part of my Saturday just vacuuming up glass out of the floor of her car with my shop vac. So yeah, not ideal. Windows fixed now. Our landlord was awesome. He let us use a spot temporarily in the garage so that she could have her car out of just having an open window on the streets of Philadelphia, and be a little bit safer waiting till Tuesday when it could be fixed. But yeah, not the best thing, but there I guess are worse things that could have happened. So
was it could you tell, was it an accident? Was it accidental damage? Was there anything taken out of the vehicle?
Nothing taken, so we think they were trying to steal the car itself. So some of the cars these days can be jump started apparently through the USB port in them without a key. So we think the idea was that they were trying to get in to do that potentially to her car. Because nothing was missing. Glove box wasn't even open, center console not even open. They
were just looking to take the whole thing.
Most likely, yeah. So
wild.
So definitely frustrating. Not how we wanted to spend our early afternoon on a Saturday, but we're here. Car's fixed.
Whoa.
Everything's all good.
Damn, Herbie must have just kicked him out, just got really rowdy, just started shaking, just oof.
Yeah,
knocked the guy right out of there.
It was interesting, to say the least. I was just when I saw it, it just caught me off guard. I'm like, am I seeing this right? I'm like, that's
right.
Just crazy. I just wouldn't expect it because we haven't really seen, other than car maybe scraped a little paint on yours because they were going around a corner or whatever. Okay, but nothing quite like that has happened to us. So not great, but like I said, it's all fixed. And then for my seed, we're just looking forward to this weekend. We're going to be going down to the shore with Colleen's family, so I'll be there for just a couple nights, and she'll be there a little longer, just getting some beach time in and some R&R. So
that's exciting.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Spending some time down at the beach, down by the bay.
Heck yeah, man. That's gonna be a nice time. Are you guys leaving Friday?
Yeah, I'm gonna leave Friday night. She's gonna leave Friday morning and drive down there with Senna. So she'll have her down there, and we'll get her to try out the beach, see if she likes it.
There you go.
So that'll be fun.
She's gonna get sand all up in that coat of hers. That's gonna be tough.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be. She's not like, she doesn't hate water though, so I think we might be able to get her actually in the water.
There you go.
So we'll see.
That'd be exciting.
Would be, but that is my rose, thorn, and seed for this week. But I want to hear about your week. What's been going on over your way?
Oh boy, just the nicest of weather down my way here. That's my rose here for the week. It's just been great to kind of open all the windows up, set some fans going, and then you just get this nice breeze throughout the house. It just feels really great, especially in the evenings, like when it cools down. Yeah, it's just super nice, very pleasant. Has to be like one of the best times of year, kind of like the cooler summer evenings are just like, you know, chef's kiss, beautiful time. So that's my rose here. And then my thorn, I was changing the water in my pipe, as I do, usually once a day, sometimes twice a day, and thinking about how even in like a short amount of time, the glass can get just like gunked up with resin. And there used to be a time in my life, Aaron, where I wouldn't change the water for God knows how long.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
and not even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I'll get to like, you know, maybe one day I don't change the water out throughout the day, and so like by the night it's like just a little used, right? It's just got like a tint of like the yellow in it. But you even notice like the difference in like how it affects your, you know, the pool in your lungs. And I just think to myself, and I send my energies back to my past self, and I wonder, what the heck were you doing? How could you handle this?
I think there's lots of things that we think like that about our younger selves. It's funny, my a bar that we would go to sometimes at Penn State had these pitcher drinks called Monkey Boys. And so Monkey Boy, it was like a liquor pitcher, and they had all different names for them. There's like strawberry, kiwi, and like different like flavors or whatever. But then there was a flavor just called bong water, and it was actually one of the better flavors. But that's the first thing that came to mind. But yeah, I can understand how I can understand how quickly it could get gross, and thinking about it, it's like you just pour the water out and just put new water in it. Like, it's not like a difficult process or time consuming or anything to do. Right. So it's funny to think that you and I'm sure many other folks just would leave it.
Well, and that idea had to come from somewhere that like that was the right idea. Like, was it Dazed and Confused? Was it Pineapple Express? You know, like, where when you see the bong, like, oh, the water's just all dirty, whatever. You don't have to change it. Who cares? But it's just like, man,
I feel like
bong water is the way to go.
Yeah, I feel like people just don't think about it, or you use it and then you forget.
Right.
And then the next time you're ready to use it, you're like, I don't feel like doing that now. Exactly.
And then my friend, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
So yeah, clean your glass, and then my seed here for the week is me and Sarah booted up a new Don't Starve Together server. We had a bunch of time in another one on back on our old PCs, and I guess those weren't cloud saved, so those are just like gone. Which is like a funny feeling to be like, oh no, my backpack is gone. Just a weird video game feeling, but
Yeah.
we booted up a new one. Have been having a good time. We're well into our first spring, coming up on our first summer. We've got the base going. So yeah, we're just kind of excited about that. It's a game that we enjoy playing a lot together.
Nice. And that's a relaxing one that you can kind of chill to. It's not as competitive as like Hunt or some of the other ones can be.
Sure, it's more of a comfy game than some of the other options.
Yeah, which is definitely fun and has its place in the gaming world.
I definitely
like
agree.
I loved when we would play For the King too. That was a blast.
That's a good game. Well, and I love the board game feel to that one. And you have a bunch of like downtime, it's not like always your turn. So yeah, that's definitely in the comfy gaming slot was For the King. And I believe, sidebar, I'm pretty sure they announced For the King 2. I think that was like a couple months ago. So I'd be interested to see what that's like. But these are all for future conversations. We've got a lot to get through this episode here.
Yeah. Well, and what was your... Did I miss your thorn?
Yeah, my thorn was Dirty Bong Water.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Sorry, we got sidetracked on that tangent, and I didn't remember how we got there. But but yeah, we can dive into this week's episode. So right off the top with the quick hitters, I wanted to start off with a little magic because Justin, did you?
Boy.
I think you saw, but Post Malone buys the 1 of 1 one ring Magic the Gathering card with the $2 million value that was kind of thrown out there for it and everything. But I thought that was very cool. I feel like he is like in the video I saw, he is super just genuinely excited about the card. Thinks it's like the coolest thing ever. He's someone who I feel like would like take good care of it and everything, and so I just thought that was kind of cool that it'll be out there with a big collector who's like public about.
Yeah, and obviously I think the sentiment that I've gotten on some of the Magic communities that I'm in is there's a feeling of they're happy that it goes to somebody like that who is like a gamer and actually like plays and enjoys the game and is kind of like here for as I would say, here for the culture. So there's a feeling of like kind of everybody wins when it goes to somebody like that. It hasn't ended up in like the hands of
just
whoever wouldn't.
Yeah, like some hide it in some hidden dark room in their like shrine to Magic the Gathering. Like it's someone who's like excited and will probably like show it all like in videos and like put content out there where it's a part of it, which is cool.
Right. So I think and not a surprise that it's Post Malone that purchased it. Do you know Post Malone partnered with Wizards of the Coast to do a secret lair of a collaboration on like art, like new art for older cards, and like they changed the name for the cards and everything. A bunch of them are like images of like him like in concert and things like this.
I didn't know that.
It's very cool. There's a set of basic lands where he like he did a bunch of like doodles on them, and they're like just these like interesting little drawings, just like on basic land art that you could buy as a secret lair. So it's like I'm pretty sure it's posts medallion, post sigil, post citadel. So it's like a bunch of cards that they just like kind of flavored for him. So like and this was a year and a half ago,
Oh
maybe
wow,
maybe a
okay.
little more. So like
Like I had heard he played or was like it like enjoyed it, but I didn't realize that he was like that ingrained
oh
in the
yeah, like
space.
big time enjoyer of the game.
Very cool.
There's a couple of popular Commander YouTube channels that like he's been on and played games of Commander like with like the content creators like of the game or like
Nice.
for the game that like are in that space. So yeah, he's been all over the place with Magic. So yeah, it's very cool to see the official or like a public official sale going to him. But now I'm gonna hit you with some other stuff here.
Okay.
So now we get the confirmed worth of this card in. So what's today? What's
The
today's
second,
date?
August 2nd.
So this is August 2nd, 2023. If the sale was like, yesterday or a couple days ago, whatever. So in July, August 2023, it's $2.6 million.
Okay.
Now the thing to track would be the next time that moves has the price gone up or down? Is it purchased for 2.1, 2.3? Is it purchased for 2.9? Right?
Right.
So you want to see, will something like this increase in value? Will he sell it just at no gain? Maybe the nostalgia's kind of worn off, whatever it may be, because something like this, you would hope, from a like MTG finance perspective, from a like cornerstone of a game, this thing holding value, maybe as an indication of
Oh
everything else
yeah.
below it. Not saying
Gotcha.
that's what you should do, not saying like financial advice. Like just these are metrics that people will be looking at. Have
Gotcha.
you ever heard of the Honus Wagner T206?
No, I know who Honus Wagner is, but I don't. I haven't heard of this.
Okay, so the T206 is his baseball card back from what was that? What was that called? It was like the dead ball era that he played in. What did they call that?
I'm not sure what they called the era actually.
Okay. So whether it was, I believe it would have been like his rookie card, has changed hands a bunch of times recently in the last like 10 to 15 years, but every time it's sold, it's gone up. So it was 1.2, 2.3, 5.7, and I believe it was recently sold, I think it was like 7.5 in 2019
Okay.
was the most recent sale. This is all just like on memory. I'm not sure about prices, but if you look at something like this as a comparison where it's like very, very rare, highly sought after kind of thing, over time, the Honus Wagner has gone up in value every time it changed hands. It's been worth money than the last time. So, from looking at it from this perspective, just a piece of collectibles history now, because that's where we're at. Where when we're talking about a piece of cardboard that's worth 2.6 million, that
Yeah.
is absurd.
Oh yeah.
And so now looping it all the way back to Post, he enjoys like owning things that are a part of Magic's history. Like there's some cards that will never be printed again that I'm sure an individual like that would love to get his hands on. So like now we're talking about just like history in collectibles. So I'm going to be very keen, and I doubt he's going to be selling it anytime soon unless he can confirm like somebody's willing to pay more than he did. But if you are able to look at things like the Honus Wagner as a comparison, it begins to get very interesting. Is like how good of an investment long term will this thing be for these individuals that are in the market?
Yeah, and I think it also comes back to Wizards of the Coast as well, to some extent, in that I would be curious if something like this going and being as big a thing as it was, that they are going to start trying to do these like special one of one cards, like super, like at each new each new box, like there's gonna be a one of one of some card in there to try and like, and of course like the fandom of whatever that is might not be as big as like Lord of the Rings, for instance, but if they, I'd wonder if that starts to like devalue other one of ones, even though they're not the same card, but just because there's like almost a known opportunity to still potentially own a one of one card out there, if that makes sense. So
yeah, no, it definitely does. So yeah, just all sorts of interesting things that come up when a sale like that is made. Because yeah, it's all cute when before it gets open for like, you know, the $500,000 offer, the $1 million offer from Cassius Mars, but like for somebody to actually put the money down, make the sale, buy the goddamn thing, that, you know, that's setting the precedent here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be very interested to see if it even ever comes back on our radar. I'm going to be interested to see what it goes.
It could almost, I would imagine more of like him being open about like legitimate offers that people come to him with, where maybe that will like update the valuation without it being sold. Because I'm sure that there will be people that'll come to him and try and buy it from him, and put offers out there. So it'll be, it's definitely an interesting thing to see, and whether I mean he could just keep it for the rest of our lifetime, and we would never see it sold. You just never know.
Yeah, and I mean, either way, whatever. I just think it's a fascinating little piece of collectible history.
Yeah.
But yeah, to anybody listening, go check out the Honus Wagner T206. It's a beautiful little piece of cardboard and just like kind of ridiculous. But yeah, at the same time, it's like, whoa. Like, this is the stuff that, like, pulls at people's heartstrings.
That they're so like, yeah, I think it's part the owning a piece of the history of, like, not even just, like, with that, it's not even just owning a piece of, like, baseball history. It's, like, that's trading card history, too, because baseball cards were some of the first trading cards that were, like, out there. And everything. So yeah, very interesting. But to move along in the quick hitters over to more motorsports. So London had a Formula E Grand Prix this past week, and so there was a lot of issues with which they handled well with rain, and so there was like too much spray in the air at a number of times that they red flagged things and like waited it out kind of to run the race and all. But just a kind of funny incident during the race once they were able to get going. But I am very curious to like look more into this, or like what the FIA's lack of ruling was. But Stoffel Van Dorn, who is Mercedes reserve driver, or was Mercedes reserve driver before Mick came in, just absolutely sends it into this corner, like basically just like it's a chicane where it's like straight left right like real quick, and he just sends it and like slams into this other car. There's like, these cars take the like barely any damage on them somehow, but he is they ended up ruling that there was no driver wholly or predominantly to blame, And I'm like, he just didn't break. What do you mean? It's like in a video game racing when you just like slam someone off the goddamn road. Like you're just like,
my taste now.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's basically what it was. Like it just in real life. And I'm like, I am so confused that how the FIA and the stewards like would not give any penalty. But also it was crazy the kind of abuse the cars took without like really braking at all. It was kind of wild.
That's pretty interesting. And if you were able to see it, that would mean that the stewards had the footage available to determine whatever happened. But yeah, that's
it's
pretty
bad.
wild.
I'll send you the video after the episode, but yeah, just interesting and thinking about like stewards rulings as we'll get into a little later in the episode with the Belgian Grand Prix and the sprint race. It was just very, very bizarre, but a couple other little notes. So F1 Academy is going to be shown live from now on. So the young women's racing series kind of leading that direction into F1 and everything will finally get its broadcast. So whatever they did, they were able to figure it out to get that put into the I guess like broadcasting rights or however that works. It'll be on the F1 TV page, I believe. So cool thing, and staying in the same kind of vein with women in motorsports, but Sophia Flourish, I think I said her name right, finished P7 in the feature Formula 3 race this past weekend, and so she became the first female driver to score points in the Formula 3 championship. So just like a cool thing. It's exciting to see that opportunities are going to like a diverse group and like clearly on merit. Like she's driving well enough to score points and everything in the race. So it's good that she's getting the opportunity to be in a seat. That's awesome.
Yeah, take that, Danica Patrick. Jeez.
Exactly. Everyone's got
Don't you ever.
Yep. You have a new woman in motorsports to keep an eye on. You can throw Danica Patrick to the wind. So
well, we were talking about how she was saying to the young girls asking questions. She was like, "You probably just don't want to.
Yeah,
we don't
this
care
is just
about
it's
women."
just a boys thing.
Yeah. Take that, Danica Patrick. P7 in Formula 3. That's sweet. Actually,
Yeah.
I'm making light of it, but no, that's very cool.
Yeah. So a cool thing from this past weekend. Another thing that was announced earlier this week, but Max Verstappen is planning to start his own GT3 racing team.
Whoa.
So with
open signups or what?
I don't know exactly how it'll work, but
Gotcha.
Probably gonna look to be involved in some endurance races and things like that. It seems like from what I was reading, it sounds like from his side, he's like, I am also looking to kind of create a more affordable avenue into like motorsport and racing, so people who do like these virtual like sim racing, like endurance races and things like that, like he might be looking to give opportunities to like folks like that to actually drive and get an opportunity in motorsport in a series that is much lower barrier of entry than like Formula 1, Formula 2, Formula 3 kind of thing, where he can just start his own team and just basically be like, we've got the cars and we're paying for the travel, so let's just go to whatever races we can sign up for kind of thing. So that's pretty cool. It sounds like that is something he wants to have up and running by 2025. So within the next couple of years, and I imagine then his post F1 career, he could potentially like grow that or even be a driver owner in like some of these endurance races that he seems to really enjoy. So, yeah, a cool little thing from this past week. I thought that was a neat thing to kind of look to start up.
Well, if he keeps winning in Formula One, then he can fund his hobbies down in GT3 and the WBC.
Yeah, I think he can fund it. It came across the staggering net worth during this article I was reading about it, and he's worth 200 million euros, and I was like, oh my god, that's so much money. Like, apparently to just start and race a GT3 team, the operational cost is about 1.4 million. So he should be okay.
Wild. That's damn, that's quite exciting.
Yeah, so it'll be cool to see once it's up and running, just to like keep an eye on its performance and everything, the team, and see who he like signs and kind of how that goes. But staying or moving over into Formula One, so some notes on the kind of upcoming branding and team changes that we have with AlphaTauri for one. Hugo Boss, a clothing brand, is one of the top or like front runners for becoming the new sponsor of the F1 team. So I don't know what that would change them to, if it would be like Hugo Boss Racing or something like that for AlphaTauri. But yeah, so they're at the front of the new, I guess, name sponsorship position for AlphaTauri. And then Alfa Romeo, who will no longer be partnered with Sauber after 2024, or after this year, is looking to become one of the name sponsors for the Haas team in 2024 to kind of keep Alfa Romeo in F1.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. So AlphaTauri, you're predicting like a full name change, and then like a partial one for Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, more like a partial for Haas, as opposed to like right now it's Alfa Romeo Sauber, and so then
right. I just said
like, Alfa
gotcha.
Romeo Haas team, and then for AlphaTauri, they had already kind of announced that they were looking to rebrand and everything and have a new sponsor for the team a little earlier this year. So it sounds like with that, I imagine it would be, maybe they'll find a way to keep it in a kind of bull name, like Toro Rosso to AlphaTauri. Those are both like in that same kind of vein for Red Bull's teams. But yeah, I would imagine that they'll probably have a new name next year as well.
I'm curious what the draw for for a clothing company is to be like a title sponsor on a race car.
Yeah, it's interesting, but I believe AlphaTauri is a clothing brand as well.
Right.
So,
and they do they have the whole like fashion aspect to their branding as well.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because obviously like a lot of the other sponsors are like car companies like that, the most of them, and then there's like
oil,
big or oil or big tech companies like Oracle,
right?
But Oracle and like some of those companies like provide things to the F1 teams in terms of like the systems and software and things like that they use. So it's not like, it's still closer ties than it would be like Tommy Hilfiger Mercedes, like instead of
it doesn't scream performance. That's what I'm saying. Like Hugo Boss Racing doesn't sound fast.
No, it doesn't at all.
Yeah.
Hugo Bull Racing though.
Whoa.
No, I just I'm curious to see what they come up with, because Toro Rosso and AlphaTauri are both like solid names. They flow well. They have the kind of aesthetic that you're looking for, I think, as a Red Bull sister team. Like it fits the story there. But yeah, I don't see how they'll be able to tie that in with Hugo Boss. So I'm curious to see.
They'll have whole brand teams working on that problem right now as we speak.
Absolutely.
They're in a meeting right.
Yeah, they're not sleeping until they get this nailed down. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see the rebrands. I think the Alfa Romeo switching to be with Haas will be just weird for me for a little bit, because I'll be like, I'm so used to just Haas and Alfa Romeo being separate teams on the grid. So that'll be take a minute probably to adjust to. I'm sure I'll say it wrong every now and then, but
of course we're all liable for it.
Yeah, but then moving into some current year things. So with Otmar leaving Alpine, so he, as well as Alain Permain, who was their sporting director, both left Alpine after the Belgian Grand Prix. So they are going to be making some of those changes that we talked about in terms of their team leadership. But it was interesting looking at this in terms of like his time that he was there. He was only there for like 2 years or a year and a half or so, 2.5 years, something. It was a very short amount of time. But I mean, he's had some just like really glowing like reviews from people. Like Checo had a lot of good things to say about him from working together with them, I believe, at Force India. I mean, Otmar, like, sounds like he just wished he could have had more time with the team, because he's like, I've signed all these people coming up for the upcoming years and everything. Like, I put in this work that you're not going to see the profits of until now someone else comes in. But a name, of course, that popped up in terms of potentially filling that position was Mattia Binotto, former Ferrari team principal. So we may see him make his way back into the grid here as a team principal again, but or technical director or whatever they're looking for at Alpine. But it sounds like that could be the right fit for him to make his way back into F1 for Mattia.
Yeah, it's interesting when you get into a place like this where the number of people that are qualified to do the job is like, you can count them on one hand, right? So it's interesting. I'm curious if he had thought he would have an opportunity to come back, if he knew like, oh yeah, it's just a matter of time before somebody else gets the boot and they'll call me. I'm curious what that feeling is from his side of it, if there are other team principals that have been like in similar positions. But yeah, it just makes me think of like, man, what a very specific skill set one must have, where you're thinking of, you can only take from the other team, right? Like there's not a plethora of team principals to go around, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and especially mid-season, like there's an even smaller number, because it's kind of like you can only have people who have previously done this position or people who are very close to coming into that upcoming. But those shifts, I mean, they do happen sometimes mid-year, like Laurent Mickey's leaving Ferrari to go to AlphaTauri. Things like that do shift and change and all occasionally, but like I wouldn't say it's very common. So the ability for someone who's like looking to progress their career to that role, mid-season is less likely than being like, hey, let's bring in someone who's done it before and can just slot in a bit more easily. So I don't think it would be a bad option for Alpine. I do think that they got rid of Otmar a little too quickly.
Yeah, especially when, like, and you can never tell these things. Hindsight's 2020. It doesn't mean it's a pattern. All of these things, but especially on a weekend where Pierre Gasly is on a sprint podium, it's like, damn, dude, that's tough.
Yeah, I mean, for Otmar, that's probably about as the best thing that you could ask for. Just about. I think a podium in the main race would be the best thing he could ask for. But for the sprint race, that's a pretty solid deal too. To be like, you let me go and see what I'm doing here,
Right?
Like that's from me, not from whoever you guys bring in, kind of thing. So, kind of a nice thing for him as he's wrapping up his time at there at the team. So I think it's just a weird situation, but I'm definitely curious to see whether they just like have people kind of fill it internally for the time being and hire someone next year, or if they bring someone in pretty quickly. But staying kind of like keeping an eye on Alpine a little bit. So with the F1 commission meeting that happened this past week, talking about some of the different things like the vote for the tire blanket ban, engine equalization, which was the concern mostly with Alpine's Renault engine being decently far behind. They are looking to introduce a new regulation for 2026, and I think they're introducing it where basically if an engine manufacturer is more than 3% behind in terms of engine power from the most powerful engine, they'll get more time to be able to like work on their engine and make improvements and all to like try and pull them back into that same level as the teams who are doing better with their engine performance. So,
and when you say time, are you talking about in the wind tunnel?
I think it would be more. I think there's regulations with the teams in terms of like designing their new engines and everything. Like there's allotted amounts of time that they're allowed to spend doing that for the upcoming seasons and the new engine regulations in 2026. I think it's like pretty regulated on like how much you can do to kind of. I think it not just ensures that like no one team will just like take off and go get super far ahead, but also that as they look at things every couple months or however often they like review things and look at where the team's progress are or get teams' concerns and everything. If a team, say if Mercedes just blows through and is like, we're just crushing out this new engine and just flies ahead, and then all of a sudden the FIA is like, well, these other teams have some concerns, we're going to shift a regulation. Well, then Mercedes just wasted a ton of time and money to like doing all this work. That didn't happen. It's a hypothetical, but
right.
I guess there's probably like allotted amounts of time that you're like, you can have this much time between these two dates to like, or this review and the next time we review to work on the engine. So it kind of maintains a bit more of a like equal progress in terms of the direction the development is going with those engines. So
I understand. So whereas like, you know, if Mercedes is allotted 1 hour a week in July of 2023 to work on their 2024 engine, they would say, well, that's that's because they're in this position, but
Mm-hmm.
now we're going to give this team, you're
Like
talking about the team with the
Alpine.
Renault
Yeah.
engine, you get 3 hours a week in July of 2023.
Right. To
Right,
to
I
continue
understand.
to progress and keep up, because like of course the FIA and F1, I think everyone wants there to be a relatively even playing field. Like, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
drivers make differences. Teams development and everything for like aero and things like that will make the differences as well. But to just like throw a team out there that has a way weaker engine and can never even potentially get to the other like the levels of the other teams, no matter what their aero or what other development they do.
Mm-hmm.
It's good
Yeah,
to
it's
kind of avoid
unexciting.
those. Yeah, and avoid those things. You don't want a team just being an F2 car just out there on the grid. Because down the straights, teams without DRS have like a 10 to 20 mile per hour advantage kind of thing. Like that would
Mm-hmm.
just suck. So
Right.
yeah, so interesting thing, like especially as there's more conversations about the progress of those new regulations, the development of engines, and all the concerns that some of the teams have had. Clearly, Alpine, I'm sure, is one of the teams that that was kind of throwing up the white flag a little bit, being like, "Hey, like we're getting left behind here." As opposed to like Red Bull or Mercedes, who seem to be kind of on top of that development pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it'll be something to just continue to keep an eye on, and then just a little final quick hitter with a little dig thrown out from Toto Wolff, but there were some shots flying. Checo was catching stray bullets this past week with some of the guys' comments. Toto said that with Red Bull's dominance, that at least when Mercedes was dominant, there were two cars fighting for the victory as opposed to just one. So like, oh, our dominant era, I guess, was more interesting because at least our own drivers were duking it out with each other. Kind of taking a little shot at Checo there, and then of course
Sure.
Lewis had his comment after the weekend. I think he was asked if he would like to be in a car that's as fast as the Red Bull, and he said something to the effect of, if I was in the second seat next to Max, he wouldn't be having as good of a time of it as he's having now, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. So Checo is just out here putting in a nice weekend and then just getting blown up in the subtweets. So I just found that kind of interesting because there is a point to it. Like, obviously, when we're talking about some of these things, like one, like Max having now 8 wins in a row, getting close to Sebastian Vettel's 9 in a row, that I don't think
Mm-hmm.
anyone ever thought would be touchable. Mercedes, like Nico had 7 in a row, but outside of that, I think Lewis only had 6 in a row as his most wins in a row or anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. Because they did have a pretty competitive 1-2, even with Valtteri.
Yep.
Lewis was definitely the number one, but Valtteri still had his days where he took races off of Lewis. And with Checo this year, like there were the times when there were like incidents and stuff that Max didn't win, but pretty much any time they've both been on like a level playing field and all, this year Max has just kind of blown Checo out.
Mm-hmm.
So just a it was interesting to see that coming out while Checo had like an awesome weekend at the Belgian Grand Prix and with the sprint race and everything.
Yeah, well, of course, nobody on that camp is supposed to be his friend, you know, and maybe you do the most psychological damage when they're, you know, at their highest.
On the upswing, try and knock him
Right.
back down.
It's all I don't want to say carefully planned little moves, but
Some mind games.
right, there's definitely some mind games, there's definitely some competition. I mean, in a world where these drivers can't stand up like half out of their seat when they're driving past each other and give them the old like yeah, 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 and sit back down and burn by them, you know, like we're all very neat and nice. Our trophy handlers have white gloves and we sing the songs of our countries, but there is a world of competition where it's acceptable to stand up and yell at your opponents from the other side of the arena and hound them like dogs until their mental is so broken and their heads are in their hands. This is all fair in Love and War, to my mind. And yeah, what better time than when Sergio is back on the podium doing fine for them to be like, yeah, it's not that impressive. That's honestly like very funny, and to be like, yeah, well, they don't win as cool as we won. Like,
Yeah.
that's so funny. That reminds me of there was, I forget what year it was, but there was some footage of like a little drivers gathering, and it was just it was Leclerc coming over and saying about Albon. He was like, yeah, but I can eat a salad faster than Albon. Like, they are. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It is everything. It is everything for these dudes. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me, and if anything, that gives me a good chuckle. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I was like reading it, and I'm like, what are they gonna find to like, not complain about, but to like talk about next? I'm like, really? We at least are two drive like. Max is beating your entire team in the Constructors' Championship right now. And you're like, well, yeah, but we had two drivers. Red Bull doesn't need two drivers right now.
Right.
But yeah, it is kind of amusing. And then talking about this week in the Belgian Grand Prix with Checo's form coming back, we had qualifying on Friday after practice session 1, where we saw both for this qualifying and the sprint qualifying, wet to dry kind of session. Track getting better and better for the drivers as the quali goes on and much faster. But we see Max take pole position, but with his 5-place grid penalty dropping back, and then Leclerc taking second, Checo taking third. So with Max's penalty for his engine components, the two of them going to P1, P2 for the start of the main race on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but good performance from McLaren as well. Kind of what I was imagining for them with the wet conditions. They did solidly in the qualifying, but with the weather not really holding out all weekend long, the wet weather was really like suited them super well this week. But outside of that, it was a little bit of a tougher weekend for McLaren after the two solid weekends that they've had coming into Belgium.
Yeah, especially from their qualifying positions weren't bad, and then also like it was their sprint qualifying that I think they did really great, to where Piastri was on the sprint podium on Saturday. So yeah, good start to the weekend. Ended pretty tough on Sunday. I think Norris was able to, keep the hopes alive. I think he grabbed some points on Sunday. But yeah, it's been McLaren on the rise a little bit, but yeah, not really able to convert, I think you'd be able to say.
Yeah, and it sounds like it was a lot due to their setup and everything, and just the sprint weekend having such weird weather. They didn't get to really set up or test their car for dry conditions. Like FP1 was rainy, then quali rainy, sprint and the sprint shootout were both kind of rainy, and then perfectly dry on Sunday. So the car was not quite ready for it, but. In the qualifying session, we saw kind of the start of a weekend of chippiness between Max and GP as well, where Max was firing off about almost getting knocked out in Q2, and coming back to GP and being like, we should have done what I said. And he's like, hey man, we made it through, and in Q3 you tell us what you want us to do. I thought that was a solid comeback. GP, we were talking about it on the Race Companion, of course, but GP's got these smart remarks, but we think it might be crowdsourced from the pit wall there.
Well, yeah, there's got to be, they've got all sorts of meetings. They'll I'm sure they've figured out what the best way to handle Max is in those scenarios. So yeah, the very calm, cool, collected GP is quite funny and is definitely enjoyable on the radio broadcast. Because yeah, obviously you can't imagine a driver just gonna be like, "Oh wow, that was a close one," and just be okay with that.
Yeah, so definitely not okay with it. But it led into the weekend with a little bit of tension that added to some of the excitement on Sunday, since the race itself it had some excitement, but was especially for the fight for the lead, not the most exciting. But then going into the sprint shootout that we had on Saturday, and then into the sprint race, like you said, we saw Oscar Piastri start in P2 up there, and then in the sprint race just drive phenomenally. Switches onto the intermediate tire pretty quickly and everything, and was out in the lead of the race, holding on for as long as he could before Max inevitably got past him. But a really impressive drive from Oscar. He showed a lot of kind of veteran drive, I feel like, in that position as a rookie, leading some of his first laps in an F1 race. Just drove really, really well, didn't make mistakes, just didn't have the fastest car during the sprint race, but a really, really nice drive from him throughout.
Yeah, and I think they made the right move to were they part of the group that dove into the pits right after the safety car?
Yeah, so
right after the safety car went in.
Yeah, like right after the rolling start. I think he was in that dive in for the sprint shootout, and then Lando ended up coming in the second lap, because all the teams seem to have like one driver come in and one driver stay out to ensure that they don't have any issues with stacking a pit stop like right at the beginning of a race.
Yeah, and I think that was like the main concern for a lot of the teams and the drivers, where they were just trying to find the window to get on to what was going to be the obviously better tire, but in a way where they're not running into each other on the pits or like causing issues like for their pit team. So that seemed to be like one of the real moments of jeopardy there for the sprint race. Was just right there on the first kind of opening laps after the safety car, because it was a safety car start just because there was so much water on the track. They had to let it drain and like run a couple, and then they did a rolling start. So it was like right after that. So yeah, I think that was I think obviously just well done by all the teams where we didn't have any kerfuffles. There was nobody.
No like unsafe release issues or anything.
Right.
It was like tight in the pit lane, but I mean
For sure.
they all made it work. Teams got their drivers out there pretty well, and like we were saying, Oscar Piastri had a great start off. Pierre Gasly also, who had a solid sprint shootout, qualifying in P6 there, ends up making his way up through with being into the pits quickly, getting on the faster tire and everything. So he drove really well, but one of the big moments of the sprint race was the collision between Checo and Lewis that ends up having Checo just falling down and then out of the sprint race, falling down the grid and DNFing after Lewis put a pretty big gash into his side pod that was creating all sorts of issues. Lewis, of course, then got the 5-second penalty, and I think he also got 2 penalty points on his license for the incident. But it was kind of there was a lot of discussion on whether or not Lewis like deserved a penalty for the incident. I don't know if you have any opinions on it. I thought it was like fair. 5 seconds, not anything like super detrimental in a sprint race. It became more significant, of course, than it would have in the main race. But I mean, he went for a move pretty aggressively. His car just couldn't hold the line because the road was wet. Like he sent it down the inside and hit him. Like I don't think that it's like I don't think it was like intentional or anything crazy. I just think he sent it a little too hard and his car didn't hold up, and so he got a penalty. I just saw a lot of dialogue about whether he should have gotten penalized or not, and I feel like it's pretty just like basic.
Yeah, it seemed like fine to me. I didn't understand like the questioning of it on the broadcast, because yeah, like you were saying, to my eye, it just kind of seemed like, oh well, that he was a little bit cheeky there.
Yeah, like it wasn't anything like bad or aggressive. He just like tried to take the turn a little too tight, and his car slid out into Checo. Like he should have probably just not sent it there. But
I mean, he was obviously trying to take Sergio out. Like that's the thing.
Of course, yeah,
right,
definitely. Just mental warfare everywhere from Lewis. But yeah, I mean, it was it ends up knocking Lewis down from I think he was like P5 or so down to P7, just ahead of George. So Mercedes still ends up picking up some points. Lando gets the P3 and with Lando gets 3 points in P6, and Oscar gets some points up in P2 for the sprint race. So a nice sprint race for McLaren on not their strongest weekend on Sunday. But also it was cool to see Pierre Gasly get the sprint podium, 3rd place, and all at Spa, since he was so close with Antoine Hubert, who passed away a few years ago there. He did a run of the track in Antoine's memory, like on Thursday, I think, when they first got there. He had always puts flowers out at his little memorial there at Spa and everything, and so it was cool to see him go out and have an awesome race. Like that's one of those like heartwarming things to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That's definitely got to mean something for Pierre in that regard, and just from a driver's perspective, or like from I don't know what I'm trying to get at, but like from I guess you would say like for his confidence level, that's got to be huge to grab a podium on a weekend, especially like for him on a team that's been like not having the greatest of results. That's got to be a massive boon just for him and the team, as just a sign that like, all right, things are not going that bad. We're actually right there. We're able to take some of these points off the other teams, and that's just got to be kind of huge for the morale and the confidence to say like, yeah, we're just right here. We're not actually toiling at the bottom, in obscurity.
Yeah, and I think that's the vibe that I got from seeing all the excitement and everything, Pierre with the team afterwards. Like, they seem to really take that and be like, yeah, like, this is exciting. We're pumped, and ready to just keep rolling right into the summer break. So let all that excitement let it marinate over the 4 weeks. But
Oh yeah, I mean you gotta take the momentum.
yeah, so just the wind slowly just drifting out of the sails as the summer break lingers on. But no, it's definitely exciting for Alpine. I think, like you said, just the knowing that you're like not that far off, that in on the right circuit, right conditions, that you can be battling up there for podiums and everything is good as like that motivation for the team to keep working to move forward and all. So a good spot for Alpine for the weekend. But looking at the main race, the big excitement, of course, to start off, we had Max starting with his 5-place grid penalty starting in P6, and then we had the turn 1 incident between Carlos Sainz and Oscar Piastri that eventually ends in both of them DNFing. But I think the pretty interesting part of that was after the race, Carlos really was like coming after Oscar in his interviews and his tweets and everything, saying that Oscar was a bit too optimistic trying to take the inside around the turn and everything, and that it's his inexperience as a driver that led him to make a mistake that ruined both of their races and all this stuff. And I think it's kind of wild. Like, Carlos, I don't think Oscar did anything wrong in the incident. Like, Carlos locked up, changed his line, like, directly into the corner. And part of that was because Lewis changed his line late, causing Carlos to lock up. But then, like, you can blame that on the people in front of you who, like, did stuff. But Oscar, like, was right there. He couldn't have even backed out of the turn because Carlos came in on him so fast towards the inside that if Oscar had braked, the front of Carlos's rear wheel would have just hit Oscar's wheel and sent him spinning anyway. So it was like not anything that, like, Oscar at that, when Carlos moved so late, Oscar was just kind of like, I'm here. Like, I can't really, there's nowhere to go. Even if he had braked, I saw a bunch of people being like, he should have just braked and let Carlos through. And it's like, even if he did, like, it was too late. It was way too late for him to do anything. So I found that very bizarre that Carlos was like repeatedly, like, especially because neither of them got a penalty. It was just considered a racing incident. Like, no one caused a fuss, but for him to be like, yeah, it's this guy's fault. I was like, that is a weird hill to die on, my friend. Like, I would just,
especially the one, like, being the one that locked up your tires and, like, jerks the wheel to the right. It's like, I don't know about that. Yeah, I had a friend say, tough day for Oscar. Like, he just drove into a wall. It's like, I'm not sure that's what happened.
No, it's not what happened at all. And like Carlos is like, we all know at Spa that you can't go 3 wide at turn 1, and it's Oscar who's young and hasn't done this before, it's his fault. And it's like, no, it's like all the weird shit that was happening right around you that caused that to be an issue. Like that was that was a weird one for me. I was like, I don't know about that, but going into...
Well, it's unfortunate for Piastri because, like we were talking about, like they just had such a run of good results, and for it to end on something as like as kind of dumb as that, whether Piastri shouldn't have stuck his nose in, Sainz should have been more aware of who was around him. All of these things, but it's just unfortunate for McLaren that they aren't able to capitalize on the run that they've been having again, you could say.
Yeah, turn 1 incidents are like the most frustrating for me because it's just like you never know what that person could have done. Like you didn't even get to glimpse and be like, wow, they had really good pace until their engine blew up like halfway through the race. You're just like, I have no idea how this would have gone,
right.
Which is a bummer to me. But up there ahead of that incident and everything, which surprisingly didn't really cause too much of a kerfuffle. Oscar was able to get out of the way and only cause some yellow flags. Carlos retired way later after just causing some of the biggest DRS trains that I've ever seen in my life. But ahead of the pack, we saw Leclerc get a really good start, but Checo be able to just catch up and get past him pretty quickly, which was big for Checo's race and all, to try and be able to put some time out there. Knowing, of course, that Max was going to be coming from behind, moving through the field. But a really nice start from Leclerc and Checo to get out there, get out cleanly. And overall, a solid, I was texting with a couple other friends about the race, and I was like, they're like, yeah, like we didn't even really see Charles race most of it. And I was like, it's kind of nice that Charles just got like a nice quiet podium. Like he just went up, he got his like 5 minutes of fame screen time at the beginning, and then he just got to do his own thing and snag a podium. He drove just like a really solid, clean race. The Ferrari pit crews and everything didn't fuck him up. And all, he was able to just go out there and put in like pretty much the best performance that he was going to get with his car up against the Red Bulls. So a really nice weekend and drive for Charles, and nice to see him back on the podium.
Yeah, that's actually a great point, where there was some other storylines going on that to your point, we didn't even really see his race that much, but yeah, just ends up on the podium, only 2 positions back from where he started. Didn't seem like he had the pace to really fight when it came time for it, but yeah, just happy to slot in right there at P3.
Yeah, and then I guess what other drivers like stood out to you throughout the race? There were a couple that I have in mind, but I'm curious who your kind of stars of the weekend were in terms of their race finishes.
I think I have Albon's Williams was very quick. I thought it was interesting. The broadcaster said he was 20 kph faster in a straight line than any other car on the grid, which was just like baffling to me that you can have pace there but be like losing out elsewhere. So I think Albon had a pretty good drive on Sunday, but that like truly is all that really comes to mind. Didn't feel like there was too much of excitement going on. Obviously, you could talk about Fernando Alonso's weekend, but could P5 very very respectable. Obviously, not hitting his goal of I'm going to be on the podium every race weekend from now until the end of the year, but he's not far off.
No, not far off, and it was a weird race with like the tire strategy and all, where people were pitting at all sorts of different times. So there was a lot of mixing up of the order of people's positions as we were making our way through. But a couple other drivers that that caught my eye. So Lando Norris, we at one point he was down in like P18, P17, somewhere in there, just seemed to be really struggling, but then ends up being able to bring the car back up to P7 by the end. Yuki as well, getting another point for the AlphaTauri squad in that P10 position. He had a really nice bounce back drive. He's had a couple of pretty weak performances for a couple of races recently, and so to see him bounce back and get that point, a really just nice drive from him overall. He was up in like P6, P7, getting past Carlos. One of the first, I think it was Alonso got past Carlos Sainz in the DRS train first, and then Yuki quickly like dispatched him as well as he was struggling with the damage on his car. But Yuki put himself in a great position for the race. He had a nice, solid qualifying with P11 start, and then to move up to P10 for the finish was an awesome drive from him, and I was happy to see that from Yuki. I felt like he was having a tough time the last stretch.
Yeah, a little bit of inconsistency from the AlphaTauri driver, but was able to bring it up to his kind of like ceiling, kind of top level, where we've seen him before. So it's good to see him back at that level as compared to Daniel Ricciardo. I think it's going to take a couple more weekends before you can really build that confidence into the vehicle, build that confidence into the weekends. But I would say solid drive from Daniel Ricciardo. Didn't finish last, so that's that's huge. But a little more to go before he's going to be getting as much as Tsunoda out of the car, like at every crossroads. That's not the right word for it, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, just more consistently like that.
Yeah. And I'm not foreseeing Daniel Ricciardo beating out Tsunoda every weekend, but let's just say the car is that 10 and 11. I think Daniel Ricciardo will be able to bring the car up to that level and, look a little more like an Alfa Romeo, where we're constantly seeing Valtteri and Zhou finishing within like one or two slots of each other. I mean, even this race weekend at Belgium, we saw 12 and 13 for both of the Alfa Romeo drivers. So, like, that's... If you're looking from the team principal's perspective, that's what you want to see out of your drivers.
Right. Kind of reaching the car's ceiling with the driver performance on both sides. And honestly, I know Daniel in his post-race interviews and everything was kind of like, it's a bummer. Like, I'm ready to go. It's a bummer to be in this like forced break, but at the same time, he was like, I'm going to take the time to just like get myself like back in shape more and like really like get my body and my mental ready to go for the rest of the season. And also good perspective on it from him. But yeah, like not a bad drive from Danny, but the strategy and whatnot just like didn't seem to work out great for him. He had just an okay drive, but nice to see him not finish in last, and definitely looking forward to the second half of the year and how he progresses and competes with Yuki and all. But towards the end of the race, just to come back to the chippiness that I alluded to with GP and Max, there was the the incidents with Max and GP over the radio arguing a little bit. GP telling him to cool his head, use his head or whatever, not crush his tires too hard right out of the pit stop and everything. And Max is like, yeah, maybe I'll just push harder, and then you guys are gonna have to do another pit stop. And they're just like throwing little digs back at each other. That was
talking about the pit stop training.
Yeah, he's like, I could just go faster, and then you guys have to bring me in. And the GP's like, yeah, not this week, man. But that was amusing. It was a point of conversation after with a lot of the media kind of wondering if they're like, oh, it seemed to be a little testy. Like, how's your relationship? And Max is like, that's just like our relationship. Like, we're good. But it was fun to listen to. And then I did find out, because we talked about it, the young girl that was there at the end of the race that Max was celebrating with is his younger sister. So he has a baby sister who's like, I guess like 7 or 8 years old or so.
Gotcha.
That she was there for the race and everything. It was really cute seeing him like celebrate with her at the end of the race. That was fun. But just kind of rounding out the race weekend and all, I've got a couple of Max stats to hit you with here.
Oh yeah, Max Verstappen's #1 fan podcast right here.
But first one, I couldn't not do it. I've done it like every week because he's won like every week. So so Max is now only 8 wins off of Sebastian Vettel's career win total. Which he could then surpass now this year potentially.
Yep.
Where Seb, it took him a good bit longer in his Formula One career to get to that total and everything.
Wait, does Seb have the win record?
No, Lewis does. So Michael had, I think 100.
Okay, Seb's just the next the next head on the bounty sheet.
So Michael Schumacher had 91. Yeah, Seb's like the next big one.
Milestone, you could say.
Yeah, I think he is. Yeah, Seb's third on the all-time list. So
gotcha.
Lewis is first with 103. Schumacher had 91, and then Seb's third with 53.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so Max quickly closing in on that. But then, along with that, since the start of the 2020 season, so 2.5 years or so, Max has only missed being on the podium 5 times. He has a 92% podium rate since the beginning of 2020.
Damn, that's solid.
Just a wild, like, these things pop up and I'm like, that's crazy.
Right.
So,
well, and then, go one step further. That means Red Bull has a 92% podium rate. That's like, that
even
is
higher,
insanely consistent.
Because there were times
that,
he would have DNF'd or whatever that, like Checo was on the podium, or like Baku when Max crashed and Checo won the race and everything. Yep. So, but yeah, so that
I can count on one hand the times he wasn't. Whoa, that's crazy, dude.
Yeah, like that is just another level of consistency that like you only see, I feel like, with some of these generational talents like Lewis or like a Schumacher or whatnot. So so yeah, super impressive from him. But to move over into League of Legends, do you want to start off over in the LCK or the LPL?
Yeah, let's just run through the LCK really quick. I mean, we've got some one-sided affairs here, so we can just run through, and especially LCK, we're not into playoffs yet, so we're not in the the big heavy-hitting matchups. Just a small best of three here. We took a look at Gen.G versus D plus gaming, D plus Kia, D with Kias, Gen.G versus them. It was an interesting matchup. I liked some of the drafts, but overall, yeah, it was just Gen.G coming out on top both games.
Yeah,
And I go ahead.
it was interesting seeing the like the drafts and everything. For me, like Canna was the rumble for Canna. I was like, okay, like I want to see how this goes, and it started off so well. Like he was able to go bot lane and get a couple kills down there. But then once it got into like the team fighting stage of everything, it just felt really lackluster with the ultimates and everything from his side. I felt like it just didn't bring quite what they were looking for to the matchup.
Yeah, and especially like a lot of times you see the Rumble as, I don't want to say a cornerstone, but like an important piece of the poke composition. It gives you great long range, like you call it like pseudo engage, where you're able to maybe like close off an exit, kind of close the distance, kind of thing. Or it's great disengage to prevent enemy teams from chasing you down, so you can continue to get your poke out. So yeah, in that regard, I would agree. I don't think Canada's ultimates were that useful in the game overall. And to my mind, I don't even remember like an impactful one in a team fight. Maybe he had some impact like in the dragon fights, but the one I mainly remember is he just used one to like clear the mid lane wave, and that was kind of the extent of Canada's ults. So
Yeah.
where I did like the draft from D plus Kia, where you have like a solid poke composition. Yeah, I just don't think they were able to get the setup around the neutral objectives. And then, like you were saying, when even they were there, the big team fighting ults that they had were used kind of to lackluster effect.
Yeah, and the most impactful like ultimate that I can think of was impactful in the wrong way, but it was essentially wasted, dumping it pretty much on all of his teammates while they were at Baron, and then just getting wiped like as soon as it went away. Like I don't know if the idea was to like, oh well, if it's on my teammates they won't engage on us, or if it was like, I don't know what the intention
Right.
was, but it did not do much there for them. So impactful in the wrong way, and yeah, Gen.G played it out really well. Pays on the Sivir was a solid pick. He played the pick really solidly, with all the bot laner bans that we saw coming through in that first game. But he
Interesting to see. Speaking of just to hop on this point real quick, interesting that we're seeing the Zeri come back into the ban list. Curious what the teams are seeing there. I know Pays and Deft both were like big Zeri players, but I'm curious if maybe there's something else there that's like bringing Zeri kind of back into the minds of players. She had fallen out of favor a little bit more, and specifically about the Sivir, this was something the caster said, but I just thought it was interesting. Sivir's been like hovered a bunch or banned a couple times, but this was the first time we were seeing her in the LCK. And the static Shiv build seemed to work really well. That combined with the ricochets, like Paze was doing some pretty good damage in the fights.
Yeah, and I think the Zeri ban was more due to the direction of the other bands. Like there was the Kaisa and Tristana banned out in round one, and then no bot laner was picked in the first round of picks. So then you have Zeri and Xayah get banned out back to back there as well. So it's kind of like you're really getting pushed down that tier list of bot laners. So I think it was more of the Zeri was kind of just the next like thing on the list that they're like, well,
yeah, but if it wasn't Pays and Death to be a different champ in that spot, would be my argument.
But potentially, it might be. I feel like the Zeri and the Xayah are kind of the next two on the list of like. I don't think you're gonna spend a ban on Jinx because she is so like binary. She doesn't have the mobility or the escapes and all. She just like So like I don't think that's worth like spending a ban on. Where Zeri with like the mobility dashing through the wall, the Xayah with the ultimate as like an escape, gives it a little bit more utility in those fights and everything.
Sure.
Where if that champion gets big and gets some kills, they can really snowball hard. Like Jinx can too with but that's more in individual team fights as opposed to like as a whole.
Yeah, don't call it a Zeri moment for nothing. But yeah, Gen.G able to scoop up game 1 pretty handily there. And then going into game 2, this was really kind of an interesting game. The casters were kind of shitting on the Ashe choice there in the bottom lane, saying that there's just other champions that are doing what she does like kind of better. None of the arrows ended up being like really that impactful, but all of that considered, D plus Kia actually is in a position to at least make some headway in the game, take some advantage. And I'm pretty sure this was like post Baron. They go to dive the tier 1 bottom side, and this was just Chovy's all day. He gets that sick Emperor's Divide up past the turret, just scoops them all up, doesn't die. I think it was like Showmaker that comes to re-dive, gets the kill on Showmaker, so Chovy walks out with the triple, and this just like totally changes the tempo of the game. But before any of that, I think you see the difference in coordination in game 2 where D plus Key is able to get like, you know, a plate or two in the top side, but Gen.G is like taking a full turret and getting the dragon, you know, on the bottom side of the map. So I don't think D plus was like trading up that well, but they definitely had some fights and opportunities where I think they had Chovy not popped off a couple of times in those fights, if they were able to maybe secure him, lock him down better, could have gone a different way in some of those moments there in game 2.
Yeah, and I think just in terms of the trades, like you're 100% like Gen.G was like would be like, oh well, you got a kill on a spot lane, but now we took your entire turret top lane, or like just really good trades. But what impressed me from D plus Kia was they kept like climbing back into it. They got down early with Canna getting killed in the top lane, Deft getting killed in the bottom lane. They get down like 1k gold, but they're able to just like hang right in that close range and all. They fight their way back in it, fight into the lead. They get this great team fight in the bot lane, and then just like chase too far and dive the bot lane turret and lose like 3 people for it. Was the coordination is like the biggest difference that I felt like I saw was those things, whether it's the trading of objectives, or whether you're looking at the coordination on those decisions and those fights where they're like, wow, we just got 2 kills for nothing. Let's dive and lose 3 people for nothing, and then lose the fight overall for no particular reason. Like,
I mean, Chovy was on like 5 health.
Yeah, like
The bloodlust was real.
That's what it was. It's the when the Q hits from Lee Sin, like you gotta take it. Like it's right there. But I mean, it was just the lack of patience almost from D plus that they climbed themselves back into the game. They built themselves a small lead and everything. They get the advantage and then they just immediately throw it away. And I was like that's just it's a coordination thing. It's a leadership thing. It's something that Gen.G, that is one of the things that them and KT have just had over everyone else is their coordination, their teamwork, and everything. They've just been so impressive throughout the whole season, really. And that's why they're in the position they're in. But it was it highlighted this very well in this matchup because D plus Kia's individual player matchups are on a really pretty even level in most of these lanes.
Sure, I agree with that.
I'd say Doran has a slight edge on Canna. Delight maybe a slight edge on Kellen, but Deft probably has a little edge on Pays. Like there's a little bit of back and forth, and the jungle and mid lane matchups I feel like are pretty even in terms of player skill and all. Sure. So that was like such a glaring difference between the two teams, I think, in this matchup.
Yeah, so tough times there for D plus Kia. Giving up that triple to Chovy allows Gen.G to kind of get back into the game and tilt it back in their favor for a nice 2-0. But we've got one more week of LCK in the regular season, then we'll be into the postseason. So we'll find some good playoff matches to talk to you guys about then. But in the meantime, Aaron, tell me about this this heavyweight matchup, the finals rematch between JDG and Billy Gaming.
Yeah, I mean we've now gotten to see this matchup a number of times recently. We saw it in the MSI Finals. We've seen it in spring playoffs for the LPL, twice in the spring playoffs for the LPL, right, where JDG
BLG got knocked down.
Yeah, JDG gets the 3-2 on them in round 4, knocking them into the losers bracket. They fight their way back up to the finals to get 3-1 by BLG.
Yep.
Go off to MSI and then get beat there again by JDG in the finals.
3-0 this time.
3-0 this time. It was 3-1. So,
gotcha. I thought the storyline was that it was just getting worse and worse.
Well, just wait. There's more. So in the matchup this week, JDG got their 3-0 to continue that trajectory. And JDG is just looking so strong. BLG, it was tough because I just felt like no matter what they did, they tried a number of different team comps and play styles and everything throughout this series and just lose 3-0. JDG looked so good, firing on all cylinders. Kanavi was just phenomenal from the jungle. His Sejuani play was great. Going on to the Lee Sin, which we really haven't seen a lot recently, he goes and just pops off. Across the board, it was just a very dominant series from JDG's side. They took these leads and kind of ran with them, and BLG to speak on them, they really put a lot of effort in to try and come back into these games, and we're trying to make things happen, fight for objectives, try and trade objectives and everything. And every time JDG just seemed to come out on top, pretty solidly. So a tough tough match for BLG. They would be doing so well and then go for a fight in the jungle and everyone gets caught in a choke point by by the Sejuani and everything, and you're just like, oh, and that's the game. So it was a lot. Like for a 3-0, like I hate saying it, but for a 3-0, it was a lot more competitive than it looked. Like it was. It's just JDG was the better team in the series, and like
in most stages
didn't make mistakes at all.
Yeah. I think there was something to be said for BLG's early game. They made a lot of good moves, were able to set up a couple of like pretty solid early kills, especially in the bottom lane. They were able to slurp some up, especially in game 2, but it just it was never able to be converted well enough into the mid game to ever feel like they had like a solid footing, or like could show up to the neutrals first, or you know, whatever you're going to use to kind of describe the tempo. In game 1, the real standout for me was Ruler's Zaya. I thought their play was just immaculate. There were so many times you thought they were dead, but oh wait, Ruler still has the Blade Storm to get up out of damage.
And Ruler, he still has the ultimate. Oh wait, and he didn't cleanse. Oh wait, and he didn't flash either. Like or ghost or flat. Like his positioning was impeccable throughout that game. I 100% agree with you on that. He was a stud in game 1.
Yeah, and then like honestly, I really could just like praise JDG just up and down. There's some insane score lines. Knight goes deathless in game 2. 369 goes deathless in game 1. Kanavi and Knight both go deathless, and 369 go deathless in game 3. So like they're obviously just playing out of their heads, but what I was like kind of taking most from the game was like just how even when BLG is able to like set up some solid early games, just how oppressive the JDG mid and late game is. Like there were even scenarios where, especially in game 3, I mean, this is like, you know, you're fuego at this point if you're JDG, but I mean, they're so warmed up. They're winning 4v5 engages, teleporting their top laner in like 15 seconds like after it's just too late. Oh, they're still cleaning up the fight. It's just absurd how just on it they feel, like truly.
Yeah, and even like BLG was trying to make things happen. Like so in game 2, for instance, they get the 2-for-0 in bot lane. They're getting a little bit of a lead, but then all of a sudden I look at the scoreboard and JDG still has 2 dragons to 0, and I'm like they're down gold. They're getting killed in the bot lane, and they're still controlling the objectives, the neutrals, really, really well. But then, in game 3, they're like oppressive is a good word for it. Like there were multiple times where they just like BLG's like, yeah, let's group up as 5 and fight, and JDG was like, we're just gonna surround you and just like crush you. And like BLG in that instance, the thought should be like, well, if all 5 of them go at the smaller group, they should win. And it's like that's just not how it worked. JDG was playing out of their minds, and looked so good. And then unfortunately, we won't have the opportunity for the rematch this time. Next week we'll have the LPL playoff finals to talk about, but BLG goes down, drops into the losers bracket, and loses 3-1 to LNG, who is kind of streaking through this playoff run a little bit. They lost 3-2 to JDG in the match prior to JDG facing BLG. Then they go 3-1 against Top Esports. and then 3-1 BLG as well. So we'll have a JDG LNG finals, which will definitely be exciting to watch. I mean, seeing like just the names that you're seeing on these two teams, from JDG 369 Kanavi Knight Ruler missing, and then LNG you've got Zika, Tarzan, Scout, Gala, and Hong. Like these are two studded lineups that it's going to be a fun finals, hopefully. Or it could just end up with JDG crushing everyone's souls and making it look like they're just impossible to beat going into the World Championships.
Well, right, and then I was going to say, well, that's just the immediate next conversation is like, well, they're just going to win Worlds now, right? I mean, who steps up to contend?
This is unprecedented. This is a pretty unprecedented level of dominance for the LPL. The LPL, I feel like we so consistently have just seen have new teams, or like the shift of players and mixing and mingling in the off season just create a new team that just rises up and at least like pushes the power out a little bit. But JDG has just looked so strong.
Well, and this will illustrate your point beautifully. If you go back to this time last year, our conversations would have been about Top Esports and V5. Remember all those series that they had going back and forth?
Yeah.
That's two totally different organizations, and you look at where they're at in the well, V5 specifically, Top Esports is still performing pretty well, but yeah, just like the rate of evolution that the LPL seems to go through, it's wild that we're seeing this rate of consistency out of JDG. Yeah. So looking at the finals between them and LNG, so it'll be just for seeding into Worlds, right? They're both qualified.
I believe so.
Or is that not how it works anymore?
No, so top championship points auto qualify. Yeah, so they're going 1 and 2. So first place will automatically qualify for Worlds. Then the second seed from China, I believe, will be decided by championship point. So it'll be decided by championship points. So JDG already has like locked in that they'll have the most championship points.
Right.
So they're minimum the second seed. They could end up the first seed just by winning the LPL championship.
Gotcha. And then they have a regional qualifier, right?
They do. And so the regional finals winner and the regional finals runner-up will make it to Worlds, but
in that 3 and 4 slot.
Yes. And so looking at the points totals and everything, I believe that LNG might be able to surpass Billy Gaming in terms of championship points. Actually, no, I don't know if they will be able to. But either way, so Billy Gaming will most likely auto qualify as the if JDG wins the championship, Billy Gaming will auto qualify with championship points to go to Worlds.
Whoa, gotcha. And then LNG will have to repeat down in the regional qualifiers.
Yep, if they lose to JDG.
Oh,
so yeah,
that's tough. Yep. That's tough biscuits.
Yeah, because Billy Gaming had got 80 championship points for the summer split. They had 70 in the spring split, so 150. LNG only got 20 in the spring split and can at most get 110 more, so they would still be 20 points behind. So Billy Gaming just turned from JDG's biggest haters to their biggest supporters in terms of their Worlds campaign. So
they're gonna throw those jerseys on really quick.
Yeah, but LNG, I mean, they've looked pretty hot coming through this run of playoffs and everything. So I think they have a shot to make it a pretty competitive finals. And then, of course, if JDG does beat them out, a good shot in the regional playoffs. They've looked pretty solid. So, yeah, we'll have some solidified Worlds teams for the LPL pretty shortly.
Yeah, yep. And a couple weeks time, same for the LCK. But just JDG on a tear, and just looking forward to some more good games. But let's get these people towards the end of the episode here. Let's give them the flavor of the week here, Aaron.
Sounds good. So for my food, I mentioned Colleen and I went out to dinner yesterday for our anniversary, but we had just some awesome Mexican food. From the like house-made chips and salsa that they had at the beginning through, I had I don't know why I do this. I had a taco. I think it was pork belly. I always want to say pork butt, but I had a pork belly taco, shrimp taco, and a third one that I can't remember. They were all just very, very good. Food was awesome. Spicy margaritas. So that was a nice flavor of the week. We also got mussels with some like chimichurri sauce, but like a chimichurri butter sauce, which was really good. So solid food for the week. For music, I'm trying to be more like conscious of when artists that I haven't listened to in a little bit like pop to mind or come up in conversation, to going back and like listening to them a bit more. And I don't remember where he came up, but XXX came up in like either a YouTube video or a TikTok or something that I was watching. And so So I went back and spent a little time this week listening to some of his stuff that I had like previously listened to, enjoyed, and everything, and just took some time to go through his catalog a little bit on my drives to and from work, which was it was nice. Like I like his music. He had a really like distinct sound and style and everything, which was pretty cool. So. Enjoying that, RIP. But that was my music for this week. And then for my visual medium, we went and saw the Barbie movie. Colleen, me, and 3 of our friends. We went to see that this past week, and it was good. It was funny. It was like entertaining. It kind of kept you. It was like silly and serious and fun and goofy. It was just like they did it really well. It wasn't.
What's the plot? Like, what happens?
So the concept is kind of like so the main Barbie, Margot Robbie, plays, and so she lives in Barbie Land. And in Barbie Land, everything's perfect. Like, every day is the best day ever. Like, and in Barbie Land, all the different Barbies, like Nurse Barbie and Dr. Barbie and President Barbie, like all these actual Barbies that have been made over the years are like different characters. And so they're like, oh my gosh, it's just so great. Like, everything's so perfect. Like, we've done so much for the real world. I'm sure the real world, like, because of Barbies, knows that women are strong, powerful people who can do anything and work any job and yada yada yada. And then somehow the metaverse or the dimensions kind of get mixed together a little bit, where Barbie ends up having to go out to the real world and realizes that is not quite the case. That Barbie's being Barbie did not solve all the real world problems like they imagined in their like utopia.
Right.
And so then it's kind of just going through like her trying to figure out how to fix the intertwining of the Barbie land and real world dimensions kind of
how
thing.
To get her and Ken back to Barbie land.
Pretty much.
Gotcha.
But
okay, that's cool.
Yeah, Ken goes off on a little wild ride and everything. He's like in Barbie land, not to give the whole movie away, but in Barbie land Ken is like an extra kind of. He's like a side quest. Like you don't have to have Ken, but you have to have Barbie. And so he gets to the real world where men dominate a lot of the industry's CEO position, like these things, and he's like, "Oh, this is kind of sick." Like, and so that
I see what's going on here.
Yeah, so that kind of plays into it as well. But it was like
cool.
It was funny, entertaining. The music was like the soundtrack was like very well suited towards it. They had like some a few songs that were made like specifically for the movie and everything that were mixed in. So yeah, just a
Barbie song.
Yeah, just they didn't. Nope, they did not have that song in it.
I'm curious why not. Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with Barbie. Maybe it's actually like dark.
I don't know. I was expecting it, but quickly realized that they had just. I think there are like some samples of that song or like little bits that are thrown into other songs, but they didn't just hit the generic nostalgia.
Good on him, man. You can respect it. Well, my visual medium, a little darker than yours, maybe by just a smidge, but it's still good family friendly enjoyment. True Detective Season 1 with Woody Harrelson, Matthew McConaughey.
Okay.
It's got to be probably just like my it might just be my favorite, just full stop, of anything. It is so good. It's one of like the few, like very few things it feels like that comes along where you see actors like really disappear into their roles. I think Matthew McConaughey as Russ Cole like really disappears. You don't see the person anymore. You just see the character. And I mean we demolished it. We did all 8 episodes just like very quickly. So start to finish. Super, super good, but just the darkest, saddest thing you've ever seen. The concept, like the actual crime that they're trying to solve is it's just harrowing and so sad. But it's a great show. Very well done. My food for the week, looking forward to a chuck roast here. Just been smelling it, marinated in the crock pot all day. So I'll be happy to crack into some of that. And then my music here for the week. I don't know if you've ever come across her. I believe she did some work with Chance. No Name. She's got an EP, Room 25.
Oh, did that come out?
No, I'm pretty sure this is like
wait.
couple years
okay.
ago.
Because she announced recently that she was putting out a new album soon, and like had been working on some stuff. I follow her on Twitter. She's like,
oh, gotcha. Word.
Yeah. She's cool. She's very anarchist, socialist, kind of. Like in her political, like I'm like, oh yeah, you're cool. I like you. So.
Yeah. So I may have the EP title wrong, but it was album from a couple years ago, I think, maybe at this. I mean, it could just be 100 years at this point. I don't know. But great listen, nice little jam. But yeah, very quickly, that's my flavor of the week.
Nice, very cool. But of course, at the end of the flavor of the week, that does bring us to the end of this week's episode. as always, we really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen with us, check out the podcast and everything. Don't forget to check out the Race Companion if you want to see our reactions going through the race and all. But yeah, thank you for taking the time. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you want to listen or see our smiling faces.
Let's tell your friends, new episodes every Thursday. Come and get it hot and fresh. But yeah, we just appreciate you taking your time to listen. Just thank you so much for joining us. And this has been another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everyone.
See ya.